Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. 11 minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Thursday morning, the 19th day of December, 2024. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin. Thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, New Mexico. In Durango, Colorado, we broadcast at 103.3 FM. And if you're anywhere else on the planet and listening, you must have gone to our website to do that, streaming all the time from ksje.com. I also want to welcome our viewers this morning who are joining us. The video of this program is streaming out live to the KSJE Facebook page and also to our YouTube channel. So welcome aboard, everybody. I'm glad that you are all with us because this morning we are sharing some holiday safety tips from our friends over at San Juan County Fire and Rescue. Stay tuned for that coming up in the next few moments. If you've ever seen a Christmas tree go up in flames, we will show you that. Not in the studio, but we'll show you that nonetheless. So stay tuned for some safety tips coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE this morning. Then later on today, we'll be talking about a New Year's Day event that is coming back, the 4th annual Dave and Friends Polar Bear Plunge. Happening, yes, Wednesday, January 1st out at Farmington Lake. We'll get the details on that and tell you about the local nonprofit that'll benefit from that event. That's coming your way today at 8:50 a.m. here on KSJE. Then, of course, Mick Hess will take over the studio, Roving with the Arts, our weekday classical music program. We remind you could also connect with us on X and Instagram in addition to Facebook and YouTube. And if you're a podcast person, KSJE has podcasts wherever you're already listening to podcasts, so subscribe for free, check them out, maybe download a few for that holiday road trip, and maybe discover a new local program that you may have missed. Outside our studios here at San Juan College, it is currently a sunny Thursday morning, 23 degrees at the moment. We're expecting an increasingly sunny day today with a high of 49 degrees in Farmington, 24 and clear skies tonight. More sunshine tomorrow, the high 53 on Friday, 52 degrees with sunshine on Saturday and Sunday. 52, partly sunny on Monday, 48 degrees with sunshine on Tuesday, that's Christmas Day, and then the day after Christmas, maybe some chance of rain or snow flurries in the forecast for Wednesday with a 40% chance of rain or snow or a mix, the high of 46. We'll keep an eye on that as well. I'll be back with my guest from San Juan County Fire and Rescue right after this. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, whose vision is to deliver world-class care, making life better for the communities they are privileged to serve. Offering a comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency care services so residents can live life better here. San Juan Regional Medical Center, community-owned and operated, here for you. Back at Studio A with my guest this morning, as I mentioned, from San Juan County Fire and Rescue, Division Chief Shay Aurnhammer is here with us this morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Nice to see you and have you here to talk a little bit about safety around the holiday time, and it is something that I know you folks take very seriously, obviously. And you were telling me that the calls for service are about average this year?
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
right?
We stay busy, but it's
right.
Still about average.
And that's a lot of, and average is still a lot of calls.
Yeah, we're averaging, as the whole county, between 700 and 800 calls a month.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's too early for me to do the math per day of what that means, but it's a lot per day if you do the division there on that number. But around this time of year, it seems like there are always some stories of something happening at the holiday time, a fire or some other incident. And I know you folks have been very proactive to try to get information out to the community about how to be safe this holiday season. I guess, what is the biggest thing that you see that happens during the holiday time? Is it more about fireplaces or holiday decorations, or what would you say?
It's kind of a combination of all those things with the weather getting colder.
Sure.
People do want to put decorations up. People love decorating for Christmas. I do too. One of the things that we see is people like to get the real Christmas trees. And there's kind of some concerns as far as that goes. There's nothing wrong with getting a real Christmas tree as long as you kind of prepare it the right way. So if you get a new one, make sure that you cut about 2 inches off of the bottom to make sure that it's a fresh cut.
Right.
And the stand that you have, you want to make sure that it's got water in it and keeps water in it so that tree doesn't dry out.
Sure. Now, you made a video, right, a couple years ago.
Yes, we did.
With your colleagues from the Farmington Fire Department. We have that. Maybe I'll play the video, but maybe we can kind of narrate or talk over it a little bit because it kind of shows some of the things that you're discussing, I think, right?
Yes,
absolutely. And describing. So let me see if I can call that up here. And through the miracle of visual radio, let's see what we've got here. 1, 2, 3. And here it comes. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. And this is kind of how to do this. And I guess the idea, too, like if I want to buy a live Christmas tree in Thanksgiving time, by this time of year, it may not be so great anymore, right?
Yeah.
Is that another concern?
Yeah, it could really dry out. Some of the things that they talk about here in this video, Kiprix with Farmington Fire, he mentions you want to make sure that the branches are kind of pliable because then if they break, then that's an indication that or that the tree is too dry.
Right.
And then also if you just pick it up a couple inches off the ground and drop it, making sure that a bunch of needles don't fall off, then that will also indicate that the tree is too dry.
Right. So what happens now? So I'm listening to you this morning, and I go home and I test my tree, and the branches are breaking and the needles are falling off, but it's not yet Christmas. What should I do?
That's an indication that the tree is too dried out. You definitely don't want like any open flame near it. Going ahead and make sure that you've got water in the stand so that it will help with that moisture in the tree a little bit. And then of course LED lights are preferred because they don't get hot like the older Christmas lights do. So those are just really important.
Okay, good to know. So I can keep it. Just be really careful with it, though, because it is more of a hazard, I guess, than a newer, younger, more pliable tree would be, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now we're seeing you're out with a tree with presents, and it looks very festive in your outdoor burning area.
Yes, yeah. We tried to make that look as traditional as possible with the presents and whatnot.
Right.
And it was also important for this that we made sure we had a water source, and anytime we do live fire, we just make sure that we have the safety precautions.
Yeah, you guys are the professionals, which is why you always remind us not to try this at home.
Yeah.
But this is showing us kind of how quickly the fire can spread.
Yeah, so it can go pretty quick. This tree was in my office for about a week, wasn't watered, anything like that. So I did give it an opportunity to dry out. Just to see how fast it would go up in flames.
Got you. And here it is pretty quickly. This is 30 seconds in, as we can see. And radio listeners, if you're not watching on the video, you're missing out. And so this is kind of what's happening. And now 4 minutes in, it's fully engulfed, I would say. That's a fire term, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
And with that, I mean, in this burn room, we didn't have any furniture, no other ignitable materials. So, I mean, it stayed to the tree.
Right, but normally.
Yeah, in your home, any of that radiant heat, it can, especially if it's in the living room and you've got couches, things like that, it can take the whole living room.
Draperies, other things, right?
Yes.
So all that stuff. So that's really important as well. So good advice. And so thank you for producing that video with Farmington Fire and Salmon County Fire and Rescue to kind of show the dangers of some of these things. And I think it seems to me around Christmas time, more people like to decorate with candles too, which is another potential hazard, right?
Yeah, that is a worry. The open flame is just dangerous in general. So if you do that, make sure that you can monitor it. And even when you do have lights on your tree, making sure that you don't leave the house and everything stays on. Because you don't know what could go wrong. Just to make it a little bit safer, make sure you blow out your candles and also turn the lights off, especially if they're not the LED lights.
Right. Very, very true. And would that be true too, even on an artificial tree? I mean, they're a bit safer, aren't they, more than the natural trees?
Yeah, they are. Depending on the radiant heat that's coming from the lights or the flames, it's still a hazard.
Right.
But
I mean, I would never leave the house with an open flame burning.
Yeah.
Sure. But holiday lights may be a little bit different story. So, got it. Very good to know. And fireplaces, I mean, again, we hear, it seems to be stories all the time of maybe chimney fires and things like that. Maintenance, I think, is really important for making sure your chimneys are clean and free of that buildup, right, that happens year after year? Yeah,
so it kind of depends. So we encourage people to sweep their chimneys annually before they use it. But if you're using, depending on the fuels that you use and how often you use the fireplace, you may need to get it cleaned out more.
Right.
And then before you use it, make sure you clean out the actual firebox and make sure it's last year's ashes that are nice and cold. I don't think a lot of people know this, that an ember can live in the ashes for up to 4 days, so it can keep that hot. So when you do clean it out, make sure that the ashes are cool. Use something metal to store it in, and kind of keep it away from anything that could cause a fire.
Right. That's really important. And right, you talked about the type of fuels and things like that. If you're burning just wood, that is probably the most common fuel, right? That also causes the most maybe buildup in a chimney.
Yeah.
Obviously, gas fireplaces not so much.
Correct.
If you've got like a pellet stove and things like that, what kind of buildup do they cause, if any?
I'm sure they still get a little bit of buildup. There's manufacturer's instructions that you want to follow just to make sure that, when you do use your fireplace, it is in the safest manner.
Right.
So.
Very true. And again, from a firefighting aspect, what's the challenges of fighting a fire in a chimney? I mean, it's kind of hard to get to, I would think, right? Isn't that part of the challenge?
Yeah. So part of the challenge is that they are hard to reach depending on where the fire started, especially if it's in some sort of attic space or kind of just that free space between the ceiling and the roof.
Yeah.
There's, people have insulation. It can kind of run through the roof, and then it's a little bit more difficult of a fire for us to get to, because as we start to put it out in one area, it can just kind of push it to one end of the house and it just runs. So that's one of the biggest challenges I think that we face.
Yeah, really challenging for sure. So that's important to note. So thanks for that. The other thing I wanted to ask you a little bit about too is of course the frying of the turkey, which we usually hear about at Thanksgiving time. Again, you all have made a video about that, but I think folks still fry turkeys at Christmas time too, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And so there's a safe way to do that, right? Let's play this. I want to play this full video because I think it's pretty
fine.
well done with your team from San Juan County Fire and Rescue here from Aztec.
Talk to you a little bit about fryer safety if you choose to fry your turkey this year. So if you choose to deep fry your turkey this year, a couple safety factors to consider. So you'd begin by turning on your propane tank, opening your regulator a bit. Most of the new fryers at least should have a safety feature. This is a timer, so it allows, if you go inside and forget about it, it'll actually turn the gas flow off, so you won't just be boiling oil all day long. This would be the initiation for the gas to come on. You would then light your propane flame. Once you get your oil up to operating temperature, which is typically going to be suggested right around 350, as you can see, ours is a bit overheated for our example here today. But follow the manufacturer's recommendations for your turkey there. You'd want to measure with water prior to putting the oil in to make sure you have the appropriate level. You don't want to overfill your pot with oil. Once the oil is heated up to your correct temperature, you would turn all your gas off to prevent flame up of the oil if it overflows the pot. You want to make sure you have correct personal protective equipment, including gloves and maybe even an apron, as some of the oil does splash up.
For today's example, our turkey is completely frozen, the oil is entirely too hot, and just remember that we're trained professionals and don't try this at home. So this year, we want to get called to your house for dinner, not for an emergency.
San Juan County Fire and Rescue showing the dangers of frying a turkey. And again, that was an example with probably the worst case kind of situation, right?
Yes.
With the oil was too hot, the turkey was completely frozen. But it just shows, what I was amazed was how quickly, after the turkey was kind of put into the oil, how fast the flames just kind of happened.
And it does happen that fast. I mean, it was kind of beneficial because we were in an area that didn't have anything else. But if you're doing this on like your back patio or something, then it's real easy to start a porch fire. And how quickly that went up, then that fire will spread like nothing. So.
Right. Very true. Well, and again, a lot of people maybe have an overhang or something, the roof, or they're under the roof or the eaves of the house, and those flames are pretty tall.
Yes.
So is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But do be careful, everybody. That is kind of the advice this morning. One of the other topics that we want to talk a little bit about are space heaters. That's another thing that gets used a lot these days when the weather gets colder. What are some of the things you see with those items?
So with space heaters, I think the biggest thing that you want to focus on is making sure it has the tip protection, so that if it does fall over, then it's got a little safety button that it'll turn the heater off basically, so then it doesn't tip over and then just continue to heat, the rug on your floor or whatever it is.
Right.
A couple other things that people I don't think about is the area around it. You want to keep 3 to 4 feet of, keep your drapes away from it, any blankets, your couch, whatever, just kind of keep that space available. Not only for the heat, but also the air that it's pulling in to make sure that it has a good flow.
Gotcha. Very good. And I would think most modern space heaters have those safety precautions, that tip over switch and
Yes.
things like that, right? But
Yes, they do.
if maybe you've gotten a hand-me-down from grandma or found at a garage sale or yard sale or something,
Yeah.
it may not be new enough to have those types of things, and that's what you're asking folks to double check.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like if you're going to bed at night and you still have your space heater on and you have pets, just kind of be wary of that, just due to the fact that pets can get excited and tip those over. And if they don't have that, or even just turn it in a direction so that it is facing the drapes or whatever, it
pets
still
can do that.
can cause
Yeah.
fire. And then of course, don't leave your house with it on. Another thing that we see a lot in the county is people have pets, or I guess farm animals, out in barns and sheds, and they're wanting to find ways to keep them warm.
Sure.
So we see heat lamps a lot, and that can usually cause a fire if those heat lamps, just that radiant heat hitting something, even if it's just the hay in the barn or whatever, that can cause an issue as well.
Right. And so, and that's something that's concerning because they're trying to do the right thing, right? Like
Right.
keeping the animals warm in the colder weather and maybe putting some straw or hay down or whatever. But that's could potentially be a hazard.
Yes, yeah. It's just something I think we want people to be aware of. It's just one of those things that it does and can happen. So.
Right. Are there some things, I guess, I'm just thinking that probably a thermostat or something maybe that could be attached to these heat lamps or something that would maybe help them from staying on all the time once it
Yeah, I'm
gets
sure
hot?
they've got heater or timers as well.
Yeah.
There's different
Makes sense.
safety precautions that are built into these things. But I think the awareness level is a good step in the right direction.
No kidding. Very true. And we were talking about our weather just before we came on the air this morning about how, yes, it gets kind of cold overnight, but when the sun comes out during the day and it's been warming up to like 40, 50 degrees, that makes for a decent temperature, at least if you're an animal outside.
Yes.
And so that's pretty good for them.
Yeah, and with the weather, the way that it's been, one thing that I have seen in the past is if people have a pellet stove and they do have pellets just in a bag, what they do lots of times is just set it out on their front porch. Well, it gets cold enough in the night and it kind of gets that frost over it. But then say 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock during the day, it starts to warm up. So that frost is melted, but there's a little bit of condensation on the inside of the bag. And because of the way the pellets are made and that little bit of moisture in there and the heat, it kind of creates this chemical reaction so that the pellets will spontaneously combust.
Oh.
So I have seen that. So the storage of if you do have a pellet stove, the storage of those is important, making sure you're storing them in a cool, dry place.
Yeah, very good. I hadn't heard that before, so that's an important one. That brings up again what you were talking about with the fireplace embers. And I just want to go back to that for just a moment because you were mentioning how embers can stay hot after 4 days after they were in a fire in your fireplace. And if you're storing it or putting it in a cardboard box or something else on your front porch or putting it in your dumpster, and it's still smoldering, that can cause a problem.
Yeah, we have seen where people may just put them in a bag and toss them out in the
Like
garage.
a garbage bag or something?
Yeah.
Plastic?
Yeah, and toss them out in the garage, and then that can cause an issue. Another thing with the fireplaces, I mean, if you haven't fired it up yet this year, one of the things that you want to check is go up on the roof and look at the actual chimney itself. Birds really like to make nests up there.
Right.
And the nests are made of flammable material, so that can cause another problem. But also just making sure that there's no exterior damage to your chimney, just to make sure that it is in safe operation.
Yeah, very, very good. Good advice as well. And I know too, these fireplaces have dampers and openings, right, to make sure that it's fully open before you start that first fire of the season, and make sure that all the venting is going where you want the smoke to go.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
not in your house. So that's an important thing as well. What are some of the other things that the department is watching for these days? We were talking a little bit about the weather and how dry it is, and I know that concerns firefighters a lot because of the predictions for maybe spring and things along that line. We haven't had much precipitation here in San Juan County for a while. I don't know exactly how many weeks it's been, but it seems pretty dry out there.
Yeah, so we do, especially if we are focused on like the wildland stuff, we still keep an eye on the weather.
Sure.
Some of the predictions that they had for the outlook for this winter is that precipitation was going to be super low, temperatures were going to be a little bit higher. So those fuels that are out there that have been growing all summer are more likely to dry out. And so then when spring rolls around, that's when things can kind of get dangerous.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
I think these days, right? And so things are kind of dried out, and watching, keeping your eye on the mountains and the snowpack and things like that to see kind of what our water situation will be like in 2025. And I know winter's not over yet, so there's still chances for some winter storms and precipitation and things like that. So we just kind of wait and see what happens, right?
Yep.
And that's important as well. Other tips for the holidays and for traveling and things like that for people that may be going on road trips this time of year?
Yeah, if we do start to see some weather, make sure that you leave with plenty of time. Don't be in a rush. We have some pretty major highways that get really icy, and there's accidents that we respond to. So if we do get weather, just make sure that you're driving safe. Don't be distracted on the roadway, things like that.
Right, very true. I know, that all the states have road condition websites and hotlines and things like that. I think folks should be aware of those if they're making a long trip around the holiday season, because again, even though weather looks great, weather's always great in Farmington and San Juan County, but then you get a little bit outside and you can get some really different conditions than what you left home with. And so I think anyone who's lived here for a while realizes that that's the situation, but it can happen pretty quickly. And depending on where you're going, it could be various different types of weather along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's important advice as well. And again, as you were mentioning, the San Juan County Fire and Rescue, you respond to 800 calls a month?
Yeah, about average, it's usually between 700 and 800 calls, and that's also with EMS, vehicle accidents, fires. We do have, hazmat situations that we respond to, and just fire assists, I guess, is the best way to describe that. So
Sure.
We stay busy.
Yeah, no kidding. And I wouldn't be doing my job as a good radio host if I didn't ask you to put out a plug for volunteers for San Juan County Fire and Rescue. I assume you still need volunteers to help with the department.
Yeah, so our numbers are down. If you are interested, you can go to our website, sjcfire.net, I believe. And that is where you can put that you're interested, and then we'll give you information on the recruiting process and everything like that. So.
Got you. Very good. And again, you can volunteer at whatever district is nearest to you, I would say, right? If you're working somewhere and you want to volunteer in that area, or you live somewhere else, you want to volunteer in that area, I think you guys are pretty flexible when a new volunteer applies and wants to serve.
Yes, absolutely.
So, very good. Well, Shay Aurnhammer, I appreciate you coming in this morning and sharing some of these really important holiday safety tips with us, and hope you have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Well, thank you. You too.
You bet. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Division Chief Shay Aurnhammer, my guest here from San Juan County Fire and Rescue on KSJE. Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.